Hey guys, welcome back. It's BRB Bricks and today I'm going to show you how to edit your LEGO photography like a pro. I'm going to be showing you how to do this today on Adobe Photoshop, but don't be stressed if you don't have that because I'm going to offer alternative ways that you can do it with free apps on your iPhone. And of course, if you do enjoy the video today, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. But now let's hop into Photoshop and start this tutorial. Alright guys, so we're in Photoshop now and you'll notice straight away that I have photoshopped a TIE fighter back here. I've just used some Gaussian blur and motion blur to do that, but I might cover that in another tutorial if you guys would like it. Today we're going to start off with putting some blaster effects on, then I'm going to do Kylo Ren's lightsaber, and then I'm going to put some smoke and some explosions around. So it's going to end up looking really cool at the end, and I recommend that you guys stick around for that. So I'm going to create a new layer. This one's going to be called Blaster Effects. I'm going to start off by going to the brush tool. I'm going to have the size set to about 175, 100% hardness. And I'm going to have the foreground colour set to white. Going to start off around here, going to click there, and then I want to finish where I want my blaster bolt to finish, which is about here. I'm going to hold down shift and I'm going to click and it's going to create a nice straight line for me. Now what we need to do is we need to come over here and press Command J twice, so it gives us two copies. And we're going to click on the first one, go Filter, Blur, Gaussian blur, and we're going to set it to a radius of 4 pixels. Then going to go to the next one, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, up to 25. And the same with the last one, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and 40 pixels. We're going to grab a solid colour. I'm going to set that to black, put that below these three blaster effects. Then we're going to highlight them all with the shift key, and we're going to right click and click merge layers. And we're going to set this blend mode to screen, and now we can see it again. Then we're going to go Command M, and that's going to bring up our curves. I'm going to go over to the blue one here. Basically just drag it up and it'll give you increasingly more blue. You might even want to go to the red here and add a bit of cyan, and that's looking good there. Then we're going to go Command U and we might turn up the saturation a bit, and this is also where you can change the colour of your blaster bolt. We're just going to set that back to 0 for the moment. Then I'm going to come up here to Edit, Transform, Perspective. I'm going to pinch this in here. And then adjust it again. And that'll just make it look a bit better as far as how the perspective looks. I'm going to click enter, and now we're going to put a lens flare on where it comes out of the gun. So for that we're going to create a new layer, and I'll have a link in the description where you can find the lens flares. I think we're going to go to, lens 4 looks good. There we go. So on this new layer, we're going to click where we want it. Then we're going to do the same thing as before. Put a black solid behind it. Merge them. And then set the blend mode to screen. Now we'll go back to the curves again. By the way, you can actually do this in the same curves as the blaster bolt, do it all together if you want. but just for the sake of clarity I'm doing it in different layers for the tutorial. I'm going to turn up the saturation on that. Remember, Command M for curves and Command U for the hue saturation. And there we have our first blaster bolt. Now you might be thinking that this looks a little fake because there's no lighting effects, especially on the visor where it's actually reflecting everything else. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to set the colour to one of the blues that we used here. Just drag that up there. And then I'm going to paint some light onto his face. So I'm going to just cut to after I've done that now because it's a bit boring to watch. And then I'll get on with the tutorial. Alright, so I've finished painting on the blue light there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it to a blend mode of screen. I'm just going to change the opacity just to something that looks a little bit realistic. I think about 60% there, that looks good. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do Kylo Ren's lightsaber. I think that's the hardest lightsaber out of them all to do because he does have a pretty wavy looking lightsaber. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw on the lightsaber first using the same technique that I did for the blaster, and then I'll get back to you. Alright, so I finished drawing Kylo's lightsaber using the technique that we used for the blaster fire. Now what I'm going to do is, because he's out of focus, I'm actually going to go filter, blur, Gaussian blur. I think 7 pixels will do it, and that just makes it look like the lightsaber's out of focus as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to filter, distort, and wave. And what that's going to do, you can only see it in the little box over here. It's going to sort of randomly shake up the lightsaber blade. So you can have a look at the numbers there. It's probably going to change for different photos and how big it is and stuff, but you can have a look at that and perhaps try with that first. But I'll click OK to that, and as you can see, it makes it a very nice Kylo lightsaber that's from the broken kyber crystal. And I think that looks pretty good. Now we'll get on to adding some smoke. So for that, I'll just drag in my smoke here. And I'll have a link where you can download this in the description. I'm going to make it cover the whole screen. Then I'm going to set the blend mode to screen. And then I'm going to click on this little button down here, that's the mask. I'm going to grab my brush tool, set the foreground color to black, set the size really big, and the hardness to 0, and then I'm just going to take away some of the smoke where I don't need it. I might actually take away all of it at the start, and then I can just press X or this button here, and I can put it on where I want it. So now that I'm done with putting on the smoke, I'm going to go back to my effects. I'm going to drag in some dust just here. The more layers you put on, usually the better the effect is. And I'm just going to set that to screen again. Remove that. Might actually put that behind some of the blaster effects. Then once again we can press this button down here to create a mask, and we can mask away some of that again. And then you can always play around with the opacity of it to change the effect. I sort of did that with the masking there. But you can always set it just to a bit lower if you think that the effect is a bit too strong. Now the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag on some flying dirt. And I'll hopefully be able to have the download link in the description for this as well, along with everything here. I'm going to set the blend mode to screen. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go filter, blur, motion blur. This is going to create sort of a more action scene. So I can play with the angle of this, the distance. Be careful that too much means you probably won't be able to see it. I think that'll do. And if you're finding that it's not opaque enough for you, you can just Command J and that'll duplicate the layer. So I think that's going to be all for today, guys. We'll just compare from what we originally had to what we have now. So if you don't have Photoshop, I'll leave the links in the description for the elements that I used in today's tutorial, and hopefully you'll be able to save them to your phone. And there's a free app called Enlight, and you can use some tools on there to help you create something hopefully similar to what I did today. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. But that's all from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.